Yeah, did you guys see this this pamphlet that they made for Trump today for his visit to the Air Force Base?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. It's like it's almost like this is what fire is.
Yeah, dude. It's like fire, hot. No, fire bad. Fire on house, very bad.
Like the full page is one sentence.
One page. It says what is I can't actually tell from this Twitter thing what the title says, but it says something about land ownership in California, and it's a pie chart with only 3 parts. One of them says federal land, 57%. The other part says private land, 40%, and then state land making up the remaining 3%. This almost seems passive aggressive to me that they would just
totally.
like include this. Just like
it's like this is
here's the percentage of this that is your fucking job, you fucking dumbass. Do you even understand that this is your job? I don't know. I love it.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. I mean, I guess if I had to send him something, it's an exercise in futility, though.
Oh yeah, and this other chart where it's like got the rising temperatures and it's got the squiggly line, that's doing it's squiggling on its way up, but like that is not clear enough, so they have to add another straight line, so it's like very clear that there's like a grade here, that we're going up.
We almost never talk about him on this show because what is there to say even?
Yeah, because yeah, exactly. Like it feels kind of futile to talk about him because there's just nothing. He's a big nothing burger the whole time. You know how it's going to go every fucking time, and nothing is surprising, right?
Yeah.
But it is funny when he like comes to your fucking town,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lovely day when you're making headlines for that.
One picture on this pamphlet, one whole page, is just a bunch of trees on fire, and in this big yellow font, it says 10 of the 20 most destructive California wildfires were in the last 5 years.
I mean, it's effective.
Yeah, it really it spells it out.
I don't know how else they could like act it out with little puppets or something. To drive it home with him. But I mean, good for them. Good for them for knowing their audience.
Honestly, they should kind of take this tactic with other things too. I feel like instead of getting his normal briefings, they should just start making coloring books or something like this, so that maybe it functions for him.
I don't know. I despise that guy so much.
Everybody fucking despises that guy. I guess that's not true, or we wouldn't be in the fucking pickle we're in, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess let's get moving.
Yeah, let's do it.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Skylar.
And
and a deafening silence. Yeah.
So we're missing 2 hosts today. In both Shannon and Flo. Shannon is actually on a vacation, but I sent her off with a mic. I thought she would join us tonight, but I don't think she is. And then Flo is doing her usual indefatigable work on the police and their function in our community, and so she is following a commission right now and was not able to join us either. But we are very lucky to have a special guest today in Moiz Mir of Sunrise Movement Sacramento as a volunteer, and then you're also with 350 Sacramento, correct?
Yep.
Well, I'm super excited to have you here. Obviously there's a lot going on regarding climate change. It is the thing that really I don't want to like use on the nose terminology here, but it is kind of just looming over us all right now here in California.
Well, yeah, we've all been fucking breathing it for the last, feels like, I mean, it's been like what, a few weeks, but it feels like it's been months.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we thought it would be good, and not only that, but America's large adult son came into town today, President Trump, and so that was a whole thing with national headlines. So we thought it would be really good to have someone on who, you know, dedicates kind of their life's work to this. 350 Sacramento is the whole. Tell us a little bit about what that is and kind of how that falls into climate justice and climate science. And then let's also get a little explainer for Sunrise as well.
Sure. So 350 Sacramento is an independent organization here in Sac, but it's based kind of in the spirit of the international 350.org, where 350 refers to atmospheric parts per million of carbon dioxide. That's kind of the safe upper limit for like the amount of CO2 basically that we can have in our atmosphere, and we're currently way above that, over 400. So kind of grounding, like we need to really cut our emissions. So that's kind of the international 350.org movement, and here in Sacramento, you know, kind of just a local chapter, independent as a nonprofit. Yeah. And then the Sunrise Movement is an international movement in the United States that kind of came out of a lot of other movements, but specifically focusing on climate justice. And so it's a youth-led movement rallying behind the idea, the concept of the Green New Deal. And so we have worked kind of nationally at the level to try to get the Green New Deal in Congress with Bernie Sanders, with Ed Markey, with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Squad, and other, you know, federal politicians, but also at the local level across the country. There are Sunrise hubs, we call them, so local chapters. And here in Sacramento, we have Sunrise Movement Sacramento Hub, all volunteer-led and all youth-led as well.
So it seems like there's a very nice kind of synergy between your day job and your volunteer work with Sunrise. Can you
This is actually, this is not this show's first experience with the Sunrise Movement. We had one of your comrades on a few months ago who came on the show and called us all old and told us that we can't be in the club.
I feel like anytime we have a Sunrise person on, we're gonna get a little bit of that. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
That was a fun one. Yeah, Logan, we're still very angry about that.
Yeah, Logan, we haven't forgotten about that at all.
Can you dive a little bit deeper into what your advocacy work looks like? On the one side, like during elections, you know, advocacy in getting someone in office, what does that look like? And then once, you know, elections are over, what does your advocacy work look like once the legislative process is underway?
Sure. So I can talk a little bit about kind of the distinction between the two. So I work officially for 350 Sacramento, which is a nonprofit that can't make endorsements. So that work is all advocacy. That work is all engaging at the local level, like with the county, with the city, with local agencies, like the Mayor's Climate Commission, which is a regional effort, kind of working on trying to get stronger climate action plans, climate emergency declarations, things of that nature, and just engaging with local policy. And then Sunrise Movement specifically it can make endorsements. It's kind of a big part of what we do. We endorse candidates locally at the federal level as well, but here locally. And we started up in Sacramento back in kind of the June, summer-ish of last year, 2019. And our first campaign was kind of joining and starting up with other environmental organizations we worked on, trying to get the city to declare a climate emergency, which they actually did in December. And then from there, we kind of shifted our energy to the primary election. We endorsed Katie Valenzuela, campaigned for her,
And
really
she was
excited
a
that
winner.
She won, yes. So she is now.
Real quick, what
Yeah.
does it mean for the city to declare a climate emergency? What does that entail?
Yeah, so it's kind of just a resolution that's not really binding or doesn't technically mean anything, but with that specific resolution, it's kind of the city saying, we recognize there's a climate emergency. There are existing efforts statewide, and we're going to be in compliance with them to try to get to carbon neutral by 2045 or whatever it is that Gavin Newsom says, because we have to. But also, we're saying this resolution to say that we'll do everything we can to cut all of our emissions as fast as we can by 2030, and recognizing, this is an emergency, and like it's an urgent crisis. We're going to put all our effort behind it. But again, that's just a resolution that's not binding. And so where that work continued was the Mayor's Climate Commission that I just mentioned, which was a regional effort by cities of Sac and West Sac. So after passing that climate emergency resolution, the city of Sac kind of left it to the Climate Commission to come up with recommendations over the course of a year and a half process, which were then finished in a report of recommendations submitted to the city. Just recently came back to the city council, and the city is now kind of making initial votes on those recommendations, so like ordinances and local policy change.
So I think anyone in California is sort of having a moment where the realities of climate change it's right there in front of us. Here in Sacramento, we've had multiple days where people just really shouldn't even be going outside. Some days where the air was legitimately hazardous. I think the AQI levels were 350 at some points on some days.
They've been above like 500, and I thought the scale ended at 500, but they've been like way up above that by a couple hundred.
I haven't seen. I don't know. I think I saw.
I don't think here, but further up north, I think in parts of like Oregon that are real bad. Yeah,
I saw somebody mention that, and I don't know what that means, because I feel like the government censor ones, they never mention anything above 500. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Moiz, do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, on a day-to-day basis, I mean, I just personally have not been looking at like the numbers. I mean, we're living in a climate crisis. It's one thing to know that it's toxic outside. It's also another thing to wake up to a fully orange haze of the sky.
Right.
Like that's enough. Like people realize what's happening.
Yeah. There have been some just deeply sort of dystopic images coming out. My friends at the Mendocino Voice up in Willits, just pictures of a deeply orange city at like 1:30 in the afternoon. I feel like for climate activists, whistleblowers, people sounding the alarms like you, I wouldn't call it, you probably wouldn't want to call it like an I told you so moment, because what a terrible thing to be right about, right? But like, what does this moment mean for you? And is this something that you're hoping you can really drive home more deeply to politicians and the public today, given the moment we're in?
Yeah, so I mean, like unfortunately, we're in the position that we're in. Like nobody wants to be right about climate change. I wish I wasn't right. I wish that we didn't have to wake up to this. We didn't have to live this. We weren't in this world, right? But we are, and people see that. And I think more like now, especially, it's ever present and it's on everyone's mind. So the question then is, okay, well, what do you do about it? And that's kind of where I see activists' role. People see things that are happening that aren't right, that need to be changed, that need to be addressed, or that like fundamentally, like when the sky is orange, that there's a problem. And so people are looking for solutions. And so what activists do, like we're engaged on a day-to-day basis. So making accessible and known what those solutions are and calling, especially I think what's most important is calling power and recognizing like Gavin Newsom, what are you doing?
Right.
What you doing, man?
Holding power
Right.
accountable.
Yeah.
The one for me that's been like, that is just, I cannot, I mean, you know, people have been sharing it all around, or leftists have been sharing it all around since the fire started, but that whole exchange that fucking Nancy Pelosi had where it was like, oh, the green dream or whatever, and she's like denigrating the Green New Deal and being like, ha, what a pie in the sky idea. And then what? It's like not even a year later, and like there's all these pictures coming out of San Francisco where the sky is blood red at like 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, cool, great fucking leadership. Like what? Like exactly. Like what's the fucking plan now? Can we have a plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's get to the Democrats in a minute, but yeah, what is the answer? What are you know, you're presenting people the answers to how to do this. What, simply put to your layman, how do we fix this? Quote unquote fix, right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of things that there's a lot of different ways that question can go, right? There's the Green New Deal, which is generally a federal solution. Specifically talking about California wildfires, there's nothing that we can do right this moment that will stop wildfires from happening. We know they're going to happen. We know we're probably going to be in a bad fire season next year. And that's just the reality of the situation. So what we can do right now is to prepare for that, is to reduce the situation or reduce the circumstances that allow that situation to continue and especially to exacerbate. We know that climate change is one of the circumstances that exacerbates wildfires. We know that, you know, poor forest management, poor I mean, basically the way that we prioritize our ecosystems and the way we engage with them, with natural spaces. We know that, you know, there's just at a fundamental level, like there's a lot of changes that we need to make. Specifically with forest management, there's a history of kind of the US Forest Service of Smokey Bear. And what Smokey Bear accomplished was actually really successful in fire suppression. However, what we know is that fire suppression wasn't the right way. I mean, these forests in California have evolved for generations and generations and generations. With indigenous people, with cultural fire, with prescribed fire, it's natural for fire to occur.
Prescribed fire, you mean a controlled burn then? Like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And even just wildfire in general. I mean, forests burn, that's a natural part of how the ecosystem cycles, how nutrients cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
but when white settlers came out here, did they not sort of say, hey, stop doing these controlled burns?
And yeah, so that kind of speaks to the history of fire suppression, where for decades and decades and decades, you know, the United States government, California government has practiced fire suppression. And so what that has done has led to kind of these forests that aren't properly managed. They have a ton of buildup of dead standing fuel. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. We have droughts that make trees more vulnerable to like beetles and disease that, again, our forests are falling apart. We have climate change, which contributes to high temperatures, extreme winds. And so...
Well, an outsized weather, right? Like that,
exactly.
Like dry lightning storm that we had.
Exactly.
Like twice. We had 2 of those this summer.
Yeah. And
that's not usual.
That's an aberration, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and basically the general relationship that we have to our landscapes. We know that a healthy forest is one in which people, or for these forests specifically in California, in which indigenous people have managed those ecosystems. You know, there's regular small fires, but right now what we have, and for the past few years, what we've had is mega fires, where, I mean, it's kind of, the barrel has been like set. I forget the term.
Like a TNT barrel? Is that what you're talking about?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Where after all these years of these conditions kind of piling up, it just sets the perfect condition for mega fires.
Yeah. And so where we are this year is we're not even at the height of fire season. We have over 3 million acres in our state burned. That's 3% of the landmass in our state. I know that we have at least the one just north of us near Oroville is now the largest complex fire in the history of California. And we have a number of others that are up there in the top 5 too, just this year. So this, to your point, it just seems like this is finally, the powder keg has finally blown.
That's the term I was looking for, powder keg, not for. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and from the sound of it, unless certain measures are taken, like pretty much immediately after this fire is under control, we can probably look forward to the powder keg filling back up over the course of the year and exploding next August, right?
Yeah, I mean, this powder keg specifically is just, it's not gonna go away. There's so much forest that's been left unmanaged, that's been, taken away. Like, we've severed the connection that we humans have had with the landscape and kind of the natural processes. And so that's going to take, a long time to rebuild, but we can start. So one thing specifically, like one solution, the Yurok tribe has partnered with, I forget who it is, it might be Cal Fire, and they've, they've brought that practice of cultural burning back.
That's great. What tribe? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Yurok tribe.
Okay, yeah.
And so they go through, and not during peak fire season, but throughout the year, clear out that brush that shouldn't be there. A lot, we have so many invasive species here. We have so much buildup of dead vegetation from drought. And I think it's important to recognize, a lot of people don't, that like fire is this natural process that does rejuvenate forest. It's a natural, fire happens, and it should happen. A lot of species actually have, or not, I mean, some species here that are specifically adapted to only have their seeds require scarification. So the seed itself literally has to be, touched by fire before it can regenerate and start the life cycle again.
Yeah, so fire's always been around. It's just this, within this context, of fire suppression plus, I'm just basically restating what you said. I'm not just trying to pull it all together in my head. This situation of fire suppression over decades and decades, plus climate change and these aberrational circumstances that create drought and these intense lightning storms.
Let's not forget gender reveal parties.
Right, those two. Creating, it's just it's sort of created this moment for us.
Yeah.
So let's bring it to today.
Sure.
We got a little visit. By today meaning Monday. That's the day we record. But California got a little visit. Actually, our city, Sacramento, did, by President Trump. And he had a sit down with Governor Gavin Newsom, and it was just as silly and absurd as I would have guessed it to be. I mean, they didn't say much. I think Trump had a moment saying that he didn't believe climate science. He's like, that could be wrong.
We said maybe the science is wrong. Yeah, and then he's doing his thing where it's like, I don't know, anything, like it could be anything. Too bad we'll never know.
I can't even joke about this stuff anymore because it's like,
it's beyond parody.
It is. It totally is. And you know what's going to come out of his mouth when he's here, and it's just like, I didn't even go out there like to try to cover it or anything because I was like, I just don't see what it's going to succeed in doing today.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he has a sit down with Newsom. Newsom gives him this, like, basically this coloring book of 4 pages, giving him the simplest facts that he hopes he can digest while he's here. And also sort of stating like, most of this is government land, federal government land, like, so please feel free to hop in on this with us. Their whole relationship is maddening to me.
Well, and it's especially because like the guy now who's like going to bat for California and like trying to make a case for climate change is fucking Gavin Newsom. Like
who,
right.
Who, by the way, since April has, what is it? He has agreed to, he's given the green light to
he's
like
issued permits.
permits.
Issued like 48 fracking permits or something this
New
year.
Fossil fuel infrastructure, yeah.
I guess why don't we just dive into that now? Because like he is saying climate change is real. He is saying let's act on it. He's going around the state, signing bills for inmate firefighters to be able to pursue a career once they're out on like a very like picturesque picnic table or whatever.
Here's a photo shoot. Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
It was
I could not believe that he like sat down at a picnic table in like a burned up forest to sign that bill.
It didn't feel
incredible.
Good to see that.
No, it did not. No.
And so he's doing all this and he's talking a big game, like, and Moiz, you've kind of spoken to this where, these Democrats can talk and talk and talk, but unless they actually act, unless they actually put a stop to, these fossil fuel companies that may or may not be paying their campaigns, we still have a problem and we still will have a problem. And we can't like just put bumpers on capitalism right now and just hope it's going to be okay.
Yeah, when Gavin Newsom tweets, climate change is real, so vote. It's like, well, we voted for you.
For who? Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing?
Vote for who?
Oh my God, that guy. Yeah, well, and then Skylar, you brought up Pelosi on the federal level, and obviously Pelosi and Newsom are very close. They're both multimillionaires, and they both kind of come from this sort of capitalist class.
Aren't they like there's some relation there or something, right? Like they have a personal connection on top of just both being like shit ass Democrats.
I believe so. I'm not sure if it's by marriage or what, but yeah, there is. And he might have gotten his first like some early investment money from her. Yeah, we have a cameo from Olive right now.
Very nice. Yeah. Nice to see you, Olive.
She likes to be a part of the show sometimes.
The Speaker of Dave's house, Olive.
Mm-hmm. She does endorse the Green New Deal. Mm-hmm.
Hey, real quick, I was going to ask you about this. So one of when Nancy Pelosi said that stupid shit about the Green Dream or whatever, like part of her criticism is that everybody wants it, but nobody knows what it is, right? So I was wondering, just for like, if you can you give me like the elevator pitch for the Green New Deal and like what exactly that entails nationally? And then if that differs locally, can you kind of describe what that difference is?
Sure. So nationally, it's kind of, think of the New Deal, because it's not the Green New Deal for nothing. So what did the New Deal accomplish, right? Social programs, like the literal basics and kind of foundation, social safety net of society.
Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit? Yeah.
So the Green New Deal kind of imagines, what do we need to stop and confront climate change? So we need all renewable electricity. People need access to a job. And so what are we going to do with all of the people who are currently working in the fossil fuel industry? Well, that requires a just transition. We can't leave those people behind.
Right.
So, jobs, trainings, programs to kind of transition from the fossil fuel infrastructure and those jobs that we're on and move them into the renewable energy sector. But it's also recognizing, the fundamental justice aspect of the environment. People around the world, here in Sacramento, people here in California are on the front lines of climate change right now. People around the world have already been on the front lines of climate change for years. I think the first piece of legislation that technically was introduced for the Green New Deal was the Green New Deal for public housing by AOC and Bernie Sanders, and recognizing, all of these social problems are interrelated. And you can't just say, okay, well, we're going to have these programs, but also lay the burden on people to like pay the cost for them. So providing the things that we need: housing, clean access to clean air and water. And that's kind of the fundamental aspect of the Green New Deal.
Yeah. So the Green New Deal, you were discussing earlier how Sunrise sort of came about in tandem with AOC and Markey presenting it.
Wait, who? AOC and who?
Ed Mackey. might have heard of it. I want to maybe bring it around to some of the electoral successes that Sunrise Movement has had, because part of what you were saying is we need politicians in place that will support it full-throated, right? To make this new plan that is a job creator that also helps us succeed in sufficiently, or at least at the bare minimum, mitigating to a degree our climate crisis. One of the big successes that you've had, and there's a great article in The Intercept about this. Ed Markey was one of the first people to kind of put his career on the line and say, I'm going to support this fully, the Green New Deal. Yeah. And he kind of doesn't have a history of being the most out there politician, at least by Democrat Republican standards. But so that was like a big deal. All of a sudden, Joe Kennedy III comes around and says, I want Ed Markey's job. I want to be the senator of Massachusetts. And Sunrise, it appeared, stood up and said, no, like this is our guy. He's the guy who spoke about the Green New Deal before anyone else. And you pulled so many people behind him. And I think you had folks phone banking from all over the country. Yep. And this Intercept article in particular places a lot of his success on Sunrise Movement. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, the Sunrise Movement has made, at a national level, such a difference in like down ballot elections. Looking to Jamal Bowman's campaign in New York, thousands and thousands and thousands of phone calls that were made by Sunrise volunteers, literal children at times, saying, this is a person who's standing up for our values, standing up for our future, standing up for our lives. And that made a difference. His opponent, Elliot Engel, and specifically that case, was backed by the Democratic establishment. He had endorsements from, key figures in the Democratic Party, but he didn't have the people power. He didn't have a movement of people that actually cared. He didn't even live in his district.
He's a very powerful.
Yeah.
He was it's just one of those things that it's like a Crowley moment. It's incredible to think that Sunrise helped get Engel out of office. Oh, look who it is.
Whoa, look who decided to show up.
Hi, boys.
Hi.
Oh, look who rolled in an hour late to her 50th episode of Voices.
I know.
That was the reason why I was like, can I call in? But I told you all, the police commission was like, I didn't know what time I was going to be up. So
yeah,
and literally when you called me, I was like Mario was introducing me and I was like, I can't even stop today.
I'm so sorry. I misunderstood you last episode. I thought you were talking about the Measure U Commission and that's next week, right?
That's next week, yes.
In my head, I conflated this and that. And so that's in part my fault. So sorry.
No worries. But you'll be happy to know Tareen came in with a note.
That's excellent handwriting. Actually looks eerily similar to my handwriting.
Does it?
Which is famously terrible. Yeah.
He was so sweet. He came with his note like.
And look who it is. Thank you for joining us, Flo. And so let's just do a quick timeout on the electoral process and how Sunrise is been a, have a lot of clout in that in last couple of years. Flo, you were very busy doing very important work. What were you just doing right now?
Yes. So tonight I was triple booked. We had the Elmhurst Neighborhood Association was doing its Measure A Strong Mayor conversation. And then I had to hop off of that and hop over to the police commission meeting and talk about some of the overlap with Measure U. So I'm happy to be here, even though I'm showing up late.
No, we're so glad you made it because it is your 50th episode. Yeah. And I was just thinking back to your first episode with us. Like, do you remember that we had you on as a guest?
Yes, it was March, and I know it was March because it was before we shut down, and so I was actually coming from the gym, which feels like a really foreign thing. I think that was probably one of the last times I went to the gym. So yeah, I remember way back then, and we recorded at Skylar's place, and I had my very first White Claw ever.
It seems like 10,000 years ago now.
Yes, indeed. And I was acquainted with his cats, and it was a lovely night.
And I wasn't there. I was out at a wedding
were out
in
of town.
Ohio.
That's right.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that you weren't even there, and neither had you met Shannon before? Because we hadn't. Okay, so we hadn't met
because Shannon
before
invited me to Mary House to give a talk on trauma. So that was how we met.
I loved it because I knew that the two of you didn't know Flo that well. You knew her, and it was kind of fun not even being there. I realized the other day the four of us hosts have never been in a room together at the same time. All four of us.
That is correct.
Because
we have been outside.
We have been outside
one time.
We had a distance meeting in Shannon's backyard. That was
and that was one time.
So that's incredible.
That is incredible.
But happy 50th episode, and I'm so glad you could make it. And
now you all are my people.
You're doing such important work, so we're glad we can get you when we can have you. But I want to get back to our
me too.
guest, Moiz. We were talking about sort of the electoral side of the climate justice fight and how Sunrise, even though didn't Sunrise just begin in 2017?
Yeah, it's a young movement.
Then it has really gained some clout in a massive way that I never would have been able to have guessed. You mentioned Jamal Bowman's race. We mentioned Ed Mackey. I was Sunrise working for AOC as well?
There were so many recent elections in this past primary that we were engaged with. I wouldn't be surprised if we were.
Okay.
We were showing up, throwing down for Ilhan Omar and the rest. Yeah.
And Cori Bush in St. Louis, that was a huge win. So let's talk about that. What's next? Is Sunrise engaged? Well, first of all, what's the determinant for if Sunrise decides to endorse somebody or not? What boxes do they have to check? Yeah.
I can speak for the Sacramento Hub specifically. As the Sacramento Hub of Sunrise, we make our own endorsements as an organization. So just a few weeks ago, we had a candidate forum. And so we invited, a few local candidates seeking our endorsement. And then we made 3 endorsements. So we endorsed Mai Vang for Sacramento City Council, District 8. We endorsed Tamika Lecluse for American River Flood Control District. And we endorsed Regina Banks for Elk Grove Unified School District.
And you had previously last spring endorsed Katie Valenzuela as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Worked out for her.
It did. So let's see if we can get Mai in there. Well, Tamika's race is funny too. She's running against everyone's favorite heel in Sacramento. What's his name? Steve Maviglio.
Yes.
I love Steve Maviglio.
Who apparently thinks that, you know, nobody else is an elected official, so he just goes after people on Twitter and accuses them of not having a valid opinion because they're not elected officials, even when some of them are.
Oh my God, he's amazing.
He's fun.
Yeah, he you know, he's America's landlord. He's a real hero for what he is.
He's famous for being a piece of shit landlord.
Yeah.
Did that real well.
So, Steve, I'm sorry to hear you didn't get Sunrise's endorsement.
Yeah, same, man.
On
I'm a
that
big
note
fan.
about landlords, actually, we did make 2 ballot measure endorsements.
Tell us about it.
So we endorsed Measure C,
I love it.
rent control, and we voted to oppose Measure A.
I also love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Well, there was a video that just came out on the internet today with a friendly face discussing why you should support Measure C.
That's right.
Flo, did you see that?
I did not.
They dropped your video today.
Your video.
Oh, my video dropped today. I was like, who was it? Was it Katie? Was it Shannon? Whose video was it?
Yeah, no, there's more friendly faces coming in the following weeks in support of Measure C. So
yay! I gotta check that out when the show's over.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so do you do any state level races or just as a hub, you probably don't, or do you?
As a hub now, we've, we started just recently within, I guess, a little longer than the past year. But Katie was our first political race. And so this
Batting
is
1,000.
Yeah.
That's what we say on this show too. She was our first political candidate we've ever had, so we're batting 1,000 there too. So,
yeah,
nice.
I can't help but notice that there is one Democrat that you didn't mention here, a guy by the name of Greg Fishman. Now, I've been chatting with some folks about this, and I didn't know much about this. Obviously, I support Greg over the lifelong Republican, lifelong cop he is running against, Rich Desmond. But that is concerning, right? That this Democrat who, you want to support, he would not sign on to the Green New Deal with you all. And if I heard it correctly, he's taken some money from Chevron. Is that correct?
I think I've seen a small amount of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Greg did come out to our candidate forum. We have a candidate interview. It's up on our YouTube page. Feel free to watch it. And we did decide not to endorse him. At a personal level, I vote for him. Yeah. But as an organization, as Sunrise Sacramento, we're really specific about what our endorsement means. And so going back to what is the power of Sunrise Movement? Why is there this clout? Our endorsement means, we're going to throw down, we're going to show up, we're going to, when we could for Katie, knock on as many doors as possible. When it comes to this coming election, we're going to make as many phone calls as possible. Really leaning into that people power, leaning into building a movement of people that actually care and are excited about, these candidates. And so at a local level, that's what we're doing with endorsing local candidates and not endorsing, focusing on where we can make change and focusing on where there's excitement and what we're excited by and putting our energy behind that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I find that really disappointing that Greg couldn't kind of come around to some things that to folks like us are really no-brainers. It appears that he thinks that his district is more centrist. It is at this point.
Well, he also, I would have to imagine if he were running against somebody who wasn't as easy to criticize and critique, maybe he would feel more pressure to be cooler about shit. But I mean, like you said, the guy he's running against is like a lifelong Republican fucking cop. So I don't know.
Actually, he is. Rich is very well liked. they know him very well in the state capitol. He gets a lot of money from establishment Dems and Republicans.
Former chief of CHP.
Yeah. And so it really, in my head, when I look at a race like that, it's the same problem with like how Biden is, sorry to use the term, shitting the bed right now. When they keep saying we're going to go for the center, what they're really doing is disenchanting and disenfranchising a whole swath of potential supporters who, people who feel like they're not represented and might not even make it out to the polls, that day or whatever. So
to the point of the Biden campaign specifically, I do want to point out, they are recognizing, at least in name and in face, that there is this movement, there is this excitement, there is this energy of progressives, of leftists, of young people that care about the environment. When they were developing kind of that Biden-Bernie unity task force or whatever it was, kind of developing his platform, Bernie was allowed to invite Arshini Prakash, who is the founder of Sunrise Movement, to help develop that platform, which was more progressive than the Democratic platform itself. And there was like a whole debacle where Biden's platform as developed by Sunrise Movement and others was kind of in conflict with the Democratic Party or the DNC itself.
Good. That's the good kind of mischief though, right? That well, I guess, yeah, to his credit, that's good. I don't know, man.
A fucking ringing endorsement from Dave.
I don't know, man. It's just
Yeah.
I mean, I hope he wins, I guess. I do.
But also to that point of, will we as Sunrise Sacramento be engaging and showing up for Joe Biden? We haven't endorsed him. I don't imagine we will. But I think it brings up a broader question of the way that we imagine how elections work, right? And so Sunrise Movement sees the way that elections work as people show up because they care about something. And so when we excite people down ballot, when we excite people about Katie Valenzuela, about Mai Vang, about Tamika Lecluse, about Regina Banks, they're going to show up to vote anyways. And they're more likely to show up to vote because they know who they're voting for. They have something they care about. That's what we're putting our energy behind.
Yeah. I think it's just really important work. Flo, Skylar, did you have any questions?
No, I just wanted, I would like to second that. And I think part of what makes the Sunrise Movement so exciting is that it includes younger people in a process that they've been pretty excluded from traditionally, at least since I've been alive. There's no, American politicians, even on a local level, are typically not super interested in representing the interests of younger people. And it is nice. I don't know. It's inspiring to see the Sunrise Movement come out and forcibly force change in that way, take that away from some of those guys. I don't know. I'm here for it. I think that's awesome work.
I do have a question for you, Moiz. I'm really curious to know how, or if you have, Sunrise has been able to capture and sort of quantify its effect, because so often I feel like these really good grassroots, movements come about and then they're dismissed as one-offs, or they're dismissed as, well, we started mailing the ballots in Sacramento, so that helped, people to participate. And so I'm really curious if you all have a way of being able to even measure, the reach that you've had or the impact, because I always think it's really important to lift that up as well.
Yeah. So I think with this upcoming fall general election, we haven't really gotten started yet, but we're going to. One way that we do track that is there's this strategy that came out of kind of the Jamal Bowman campaign of friend-to-friend phone banking. And so not just regular phone banking where you have a list of people that you randomly call. It's you call the people that you know, and you get them excited about a local candidate, and you turn them out. And people, when they hear that from someone they know, they recognize this person that I care about cares a lot about this. They're excited about this, and they just got me excited about this. So yes, I'm going to go vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so we track, how many, or we will be tracking, how many people we turn out. Looking at this past primary, we didn't, I think, track as much with Katie. I mean, it was our first election, but at the at the national level, you can look back at specific primary elections where Sunrise Movement got 10,000 people signed up to vote, and we made 10,000 calls to every single one of those people and told them to vote that day. And looking at the margin of victory for, like, say, Bernie in that primary election, it was less than 10,000.
Wow.
So it literally swung votes.
I've got some hard numbers from the Intercept article. Again, these are national level elections, so it's going to be a different scale. But Cori Bush in her race for the House in St. Louis, she had Sunrise volunteers come out and make calls to over 150,000 voters in the district. That's incredible. And then for Bowman, he said, for me, Sunrise was incredible. We made 1.2 million phone calls during our campaign, and Sunrise made 865,000 of them. So, like, that's the sort of impact that your movement is having on these elections, and it's hard to overstate that.
Yeah.
And then I guess my next question, thanks, Moiz, would be, obviously COVID, right? So how does that impact at all your strategy for this November?
Yeah, definitely. That's a question that I think we'll be figuring out. I mean, we just made our endorsements in like 6 days ago or so. So we're going to be starting with campaigns. I think a lot of what we're going to be doing is that friend-to-friend phone banking, but also not just, that like throwing energy at it, but also kind of, these are elections that a lot of people don't pay attention to. So holding community spaces, like what does a Grove Unified School District trustee even do? Holding like panels and community events. I mean, we still have yet to reach out and develop a strategy with these campaigns, but we're definitely going to be doing that soon. But yeah, I think we'll find out soon. One other thing that I wanted to mention, I mentioned we do candidate endorsements, but something that's been in the works for a while now, actually, is a voter guide. And so for all of Sacramento County, there are so many candidates in so many elections that people don't know what any of those positions even are. If you're turning people out to vote for Joe Biden or for the presidential ticket or whatever it be, when they see the rest of the ballot, how many people know who else is on there, or what those positions are? And so making that information as accessible as possible is something that's kind of been our goal. And so, that voter guide will be trying to get as much information about those candidates and how they line up with, our core values. And I forget what they are, but there's like 5 things that we're kind of analyzing them for. But yeah, we'll be releasing that voter guide soon, hopefully.
I love it.
Yeah, well, I think we're partnering with you on that.
Yeah. The sister circle is? Or?
Yes. So Logan and I had a conversation a while back. And so we sort of split up because they have races on their list that we hadn't yet covered. And so we're going to kind of do research together and share. I think, we talked about how much our values are in alignment with one another. So it just kind of made sense. Of course, we approach our voter guides similarly in terms of, like, sometimes we have to make recommendations for a race, even if that person we don't call ours endorsements either. Only Black Women Organized for Political Action does endorsements. So that's the Sister Circle voter guide that we've been putting out since I want to say it's 2014, and has been going every election. And we try to capture most of the races, certainly for the city of Sacramento, many of them for the county of Sacramento as well. So if you live in the city, we can guarantee everything that's on your ballot will be on our voter guide. Everyone else, it just depends on whether or not we have the bandwidth to get to you. So
Yeah.
That's great. That's cool that you're working together with Sunrise on this.
That is awesome. I'm glad
The
to hear
Sister
that.
Circle voter guide has gained a lot of prominence in the last couple of years, and you see it shared around just every single election now. So speaking of clout, Flo.
coming out October 3rd. So
All
we're really excited.
I think the next thing, Moiz, is, you know, people are listening and they might be excited and they want to help you in the fights that you're doing. How does one get involved with a Sunrise Sacramento?
Yeah, so I think, like, more broadly, how does one get involved with a Sunrise? There's Sunrise hubs around the country. You can just Google Sunrise Movement and it'll take you to the national landing page, and from there you can see like a map of how many hubs there are across the country. You enter your zip code and you can find your local hub. In this case, it's Sunrise Sacramento. We have our social media at Sunrise MVMT Sac on Instagram. And, you know, we have Facebook and Twitter as well. We had a TikTok. We have only a few TikToks up, but I don't think we've been active on there. But yeah, we communicate mostly through our email list, which you can get involved with just through our social media. You know, the link in the bio there, get plugged in to our email list. But on top of that, we have our interest form, and from there, you know, what we're really about is building people power, and so bringing in as many young people as possible. You know, plugging them into our projects, our various teams, providing trainings and resources, you know, coaching. And really building up leadership, especially for people who tend to historically, or, you know, people who don't think of themselves as leaders. We recognize, you know, what does leadership look like? It's not one person at the top telling everyone what to do. It's people coming together and kind of creating the conditions that allow for, you know, one another to turn the resources they have into the power they need to get the change they want.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's anytime, you know, we've now had 2 Sunrise folks on here, and I love it every time. I don't want to give anything away yet to listeners, but there is a little collaboration in the works actually with Voices and Sunrise. We won't give any details yet, but I think it's really exciting. I'm super excited to see the continued work you do. And again, listeners, if you're young enough, because I'm not, and you want to join Sunrise, go check that out.
A point of clarification there.
Oh, go ahead.
Sunrise defines youth as 35 and under. We are a youth-led movement, but we are a movement open to older allies. So we have older allies.
We have a geriatric unit for those of us
Okay.
over 35.
That's the
very
sun.
kind
That's
of
the
you.
sunset.
That's the
movement.
sunset movement.
Oh my God. But yeah, you know, it sounds like Sunrise Sacramento is going to be putting their weight behind a lot of things, not just Mai Vang, Regina Banks, and Tamika Lecluse. You know, they've put out their yes on C, no on A, and yeah, just thanks for all the work you do, and it's a joy to have you on. I was hoping to talk about a couple other updates if everyone else is cool. Moiz, you are more than welcome to be a part of this. But after last episode, Flo and Skylar and I were sort of just discussing the tenor of discourse these days and how it feels like things are sort of reaching a more intense point. Obviously, you know, just today out at the Trump meeting, you had a car drive through a group of demonstrators that I believe were Black Lives Matter demonstrators, also anti-Trump. That tends to go hand in hand. and clipped 2 demonstrators. I believe one of them had to go get medical attention. And then after that,
because of what we're gonna cover here, I think it's important to point out that the cops did. I think that person got either arrested or like that person didn't just get away with it. The cops did not
got that person.
Yeah, exactly. So they did something.
And
in
then,
this case.
And then a little bit later, a sheriff's deputy vehicle was sort of
CHP
surrounded. Oh yeah, thank you. CHP, California Highway Patrol vehicle, was within the a little group of protesters. It nudged a young guy who was in front of the vehicle, and in response, he sort of like hopped up onto the hood, and then they sped off, and he sort of like flew off onto the ground. He, I believe, got taken away in an ambulance about a half hour later as well.
From the video, it looked like he hit his head pretty hard. I mean, he left the car when it was doing about 20 miles an hour, I would say.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, it does feel like the temperature is getting higher. I don't know if what happened in LA with the man shooting the 2 sheriff's deputies down in LA County, if that has anything to do with this sort of raised tension, but it's very likely. I just wanted to take a moment for us, especially Flo, after you were at the police commission, to kind of make some space for that and kind of see where we all are on that and what we're thinking about it.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable saying this out loud in public, not because I'm shy or afraid to say things out loud, but I have been concerned about whether or not saying this out loud makes it real or lowers people's barrier to it, because I am not a person who wants to see people get hurt. But I have been whispering this behind closed doors, and now I guess I'm saying it to the public, that I really think we're on the brink of a civil war. And the reason that I didn't want to say that out loud before was because I almost didn't want it to be true. I still don't necessarily. I don't know. Like, history will tell me whether or not it's a good idea or not. Because I certainly don't think anybody, wanted our first civil war. But I mean, there's a great good that came out of it. I might be biased, but I think we're at a place where the polarization is so real, and I think I'm feeling emboldened to say it because I watched The Social Dilemma on Friday, and one of the commenters in that documentary said, I think we're going to have a civil war. And I was like, okay, this isn't like some fringe, idea. And the more people I've whispered it to, I think I feel emboldened because a lot of people have said, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. And I'm like, okay, so we're all thinking it and just kind of not wanting to say it out loud. But all of the makings, the more that I've been reading a lot of historical texts and, thinking a lot about, anti-racism and things like that, like all the historical texts say this is what leads up to a civil war. And when I talk to my friends outside of the US, they're like, I don't know how you all are just like cavalierly talking about reopening the economy when you're on the brink of a civil war. Like everybody's so like crystal clear about this. And we're just kind of like, la da da, I hope I get to, go to my Coachella next year. And it's just like, we're about to have a civil war. So I honestly think that's where we are. I'm after listening to some of the tenor of public discourse lately and just how unwilling we are to engage even in facts, even when we disagree.
Right.
I don't know how we come back from this. Honestly.
I don't see us talking our way out of it either.
Yeah, it's a religion at this point, right? Like people are religiously committed to their idea, even when they're presented with clear evidence that it's wrong. And so, even truth is up for question at this point. And I just don't know how you walk yourself back from that ledge when people are willing to fall on a sword for their belief in this way. And I'm not saying that, honoring your beliefs is wrong, but I'm saying like, even when presented with data that you've been misguided, people are still like, well, that's still how I'm gonna move forward. You know, like, I just don't know that you come back from that.
Yeah. I mean, we've been on this slide for a while, right? And it was kind of, and I feel like a sizable chunk of the country has been on this tip for years. And like, we have kind of been skating around it on the coasts because we're not like around, it's not as prominent where we are. But like, I think it started to become clear to people that like a sizable chunk of the country has just completely given up the idea of like truth, or like the idea that any of that means anything or like has any bearing over how they make their decisions or what they base their beliefs on. That like, we started to figure that out in 2016, and like thought, like, at least I thought at the time, I was like, oh, this is a problem we have to solve. And at this point in 2020, it's like, this is not, I don't know how to, like, how do you solve the problem? There isn't, I do not see a solution. And I hear you on the thing where you're like hesitant to start talking about a civil war, for one, because saying it out loud is scary, but for two, because it feels like hyperbole, and so much hyperbole gets thrown around like Trump and Nazism and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that to say that the people who make those criticisms are wrong. Like, Trump is a fucking straight up fascist. Like, do not confuse my feelings about that man. But like civil war, like the idea of coming out and saying straight up, we really might actually be headed for a civil war, feels like hyperbole still to me. But it, like, every day, it feels less and less so. And that's fucking terrifying.
Scary. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the ante is upped right now. And when we talk about, I mean, again, you know, we had the Patreon episode where I discussed the Spanish Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that bubbled up right before it were far right people and far left people having skirmishes in the streets of their cities, which we're kind of seeing little elements of that happen now, right?
Right now.
And we're seeing actual deaths now in the streets in these little, you know, melees. And I don't think you can look at this and not think like, oh, the ante is upped now. You know, the guy, you know, the one guy who killed a man in the streets of Portland, that felt like it upped the ante because finally.
You talking about Rittenhouse?
Yeah. No,
Mm-hmm.
Portland. So Rittenhouse was.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, Kenosha. Yeah.
Kenosha, yeah.
This was a guy who was out there with the people who were against the Trump guys coming into Portland.
Right.
Ended up shooting somebody. And then what are we seeing now? We're seeing the state come in with extrajudicial, basically justice. And Trump bragging about it.
U.S. Marshals hunted that guy down across state lines and killed him.
They killed him. Yeah. And Trump is, and it's not like, you're not even hearing much about like if he was fighting back or whatever. Trump is going up on stages and saying, you know, we killed him and I wanted to kill him.
It's terrifying. It really is terrifying. Like, I think the thing that really convinces me is like, I think, I mean, somebody said, and I hope it was hyperbole, but like, you know, if Trump wins, I don't even know if I can make, like, I mean, just this, like, I'm holding on to hope that this, and I'm just like, where do people go when that happens, right? Because I stand by my prediction that he's going to win this election. And so I'm just kind of like, so what do people do with that pent up frustration, and what happens to, you know, the I think it's called the Netflix and beer philosophy or idea, which is like, as long as people have Netflix and
sports.
beer,
That's what it
and
was.
sports, which is why, you know, we probably would be at war if the NFL hadn't come back recently. But like, if people don't have, you know, their sort of like entertainment and something to get them by, and they're in, you know, dire straits, that they'll take to the streets because they have nothing else. And so we are, you know, one CARES Act payment, one, you know, unemployment, you know, denial away from a bunch of people. You know, what is it, 30 million Americans have been unable to pay their rents. You know, people are going to get desperate. And the only reason that it hasn't gotten worse is because we have had some, you know, very minimal support for folks. But if that runs out after the election.
Right. The other side of it too that is really exacerbating this is the involvement of law enforcement.
Yep.
Like these guys keep escalating shit, and like to me it blows my fucking mind. We've talked about it on the show before, but like if you are a cop, like it's in your best interest to get these racist, violent psychopaths out of the force. Stop circling the wagons around these guys, because these guys come out and fucking kill protesters or do whatever the fuck, you know, they're gonna do, like this violent shit. Like now we have somebody in LA who just walked up on a fucking couple of sheriffs in their car and put some bullets in them, right? Like what's going to happen next? Because now the cops, you know, that fucking sheriff down in LA, the sheriff is on TV being like, I'm fucking pissed off, you know, like blah, blah, blah. So now this guy and his whole crew is fucking running around with a whole crew of guys who are fucking roided out with itchy trigger fingers. What do you think's going to happen down in LA? And then when that happens, at some point, what's going to happen is that somebody's going to come walking out of a group of protesters and just shoot a cop. And then we're fucking off to the fucking races. And I feel like that, I mean, that could happen next fucking week. Like the stage is set for it. Like, and the escalation is happening. And once we get too far down that road, I don't know.
Yeah. Let's also mention that the cops are now also really messing with and they always do, but they're messing with journalists as well. They arrested a great reporter, a young woman out in LA. And then they came out just saying, well, she didn't have press credentials and she was doing this and that. All the video that came out showed that they're fucking liars. And again, I've said this many times on the show ad nauseum, but it's important to remember that cops are liars. Cops lie, you know? Stephon Clark didn't have a toolbar. A toolbar doesn't exist.
Toolbar doesn't exist. I don't know what that is.
So, you know, their PR arm is basically, it's propaganda and it's circling the wagons, as Skylar said. So if you're a journalist friend out there, don't believe cops. Don't believe anything they say till you see the footage.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, it sucks that they're arresting. You know, we've got that law on Gavin Newsom's desk where they're like, you know, if we pass it, then cops can't arrest us. So I'm reading that and I'm like,
we'll see. That feels like fucking like carotid chokes to me. Like, all right, let's see. Like, if they've like, will we enforce this law on the cops? Because we don't enforce any of the other fucking ones. I don't know why this would be an exception.
No.
It's not like they obey any of the other fucking laws they're supposed to obey.
Right.
But anyway, it seems like we're all on similar pages here with that. There's no like call to action or anything with that. I just wanted to like take a moment and kind of discuss that because it does feel like something's happening. And when you talk about your friends in other countries asking how we can be so flip about this, it's almost like you're watching. There's so much happening right now that like sometimes the best thing you can do is go walk in hazardous air around the block because you don't know what else to do.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I would like to too, and I know I almost feel stupid even saying this because at this point, like being like scandalized by hypocrisy on the part of the right wing is like cute, you know, almost. But it is like, I cannot, is in as much as it is now obviously like our daily normal routine, the irony that the guys who have been amassing these like giant collections of arms and guns and everything, ostensibly for the purpose of like, I got to be able to form a militia and defend myself in the case that the government becomes tyrannical, are like these are guys driving around with Blue Lives flags sticking out of the backs of their trucks. Now that the cops are like undisputably a force of fucking tyranny and violence against the people that they're supposed to be protecting and serving, every single last one of these fucks is like a full-throated supporter of the thing.
We never really believed them, though.
Of course, we did not really ever believe them, and that's why I say it's like it's almost not even worth bringing up, because it's so it is so obviously bullshit and always was so obviously bullshit. But like the fact that these guys are cool with just like being that really obviously full of bullshit blows my fucking mind. Like I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe this is my fucking sweet summer child moment, but like conviction should fucking mean something. And you ought to be able to fucking have some. Well, speaking of extremely depressing situations that are seemingly without an end and will almost certainly end in terrible ruin and Great Depression. It is now day 5,438, and I am still unemployed. But here's the good news. Instead of, this whole like rat race thing, trying to run around making ends meet, now I just sit on the internet all day and read takes and try and parse through them. And I'm trying to go on a positive bent here, but it's a very depressing way to spend your day. I'm trying to do less of it. Mm-hmm. In that vein, I need a more streamlined way, because I can't just do the Twitter thing, right? I need a more streamlined way to get only the most perfect takes. And I'm hoping that there's maybe like a website or like something going on like that is like a collection of great takes that will save me from spending all of my free time ruining my mental health on Twitter. Yeah. Can anybody help me with that?
I think I can take that. And I totally empathize, particularly the last few days with, when you go out there and all you're seeking to do is just search for a bunch of perfect takes, and that's
what I'm trying to do.
Very quickly just turns into doom scrolling, right?
Right.
So there is one place with all perfect takes that I know of, and it's called voicesrivercity.com.
That's what it is.
Yeah. We've been around for 3 years, started out as a news and arts coverage site that did truth to power commentary, among other things. We also have the Sac Follows the Money project, which is always very fun. Our current iteration, as you all know, is the podcast, and we've been going now. I think we're like 3 months away from having been doing this for a year, 2 or 3 months now. So that's really cool that we've been able to kind of have this continuity since we started back up. The podcast is on all podcast platforms. We're on Facebook, Voices River City, Twitter at Voices River City, Instagram. Skylar always does some sort of video there that makes me laugh a lot. So follow us on there at Voices River City. And then, of course, we're on Patreon. If you want to go down as low as $5 a month, it's a drink at the bar you're not going to right now, right? And it really helps support us and helps us continue to do the work that we're doing. We've gotten a lot of new fun patrons this month, and Skylar and I owe you all limericks. So just you've got
and nipples. You also owe them nipples.
I got
Where's the nipple?
If I owe people limericks, I probably shouldn't go on a podcast and talk about how all I do is scroll Twitter all day and then not have any limericks.
To show, yeah. Well, I won't be showing any nipples unsolicited, so patrons, you'll have to ask explicitly.
I thought there was a donation amount that
there's like a
involved
different
us in freeing the nipple.
There is.
Oh,
So that's
yeah.
$1 squillion.
$1 squillion.
It
It's a
sounds like
squillion, okay.
Dave's trying to set up like a voices like OnlyFans kind of situation.
I'm not against that. Hey, anything for a free press.
Unemployment's a bitch.
Yeah. So, yeah. So those are all the things we have. I don't know. It's just been a wild ride doing voices. And I'm so glad, Flo, that we've had you for 50 episodes now.
I know. I'm really glad too. This has been fun.
Yeah.
Who knew I needed a podcast in my life?
Yeah.
Right.
It's actually been, I know for myself during the COVID era, it's been grounding, and it's helped me have something to look forward to and actually have something to build a schedule around.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know. My
experience is the opposite, but I still enjoy it.
We just partnered with this new app that will be coming out soon called Opt Out that only hosts non-corporate media outlets. And so that's really cool. That's going to be really fun to be a part of their project. There's a lot of big name, sort of non-corporate, sometimes leftist outlets that are a part of this project. So it's fun. It's fun to be a part of this. So a lot more to come. You know, like I said, Sunrise and Voices will be collabing soon, and more details on that later. To that point, Moiz, so glad you could come on such short notice, and just thank you for all you do and for all your expertise.
Yeah, seriously, man. It's great to talk to you. Love your work, and thank you for making time for us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. Is that our show?
I think it is, but Dave, if I really wanted to distill the takes down even further and go look at your personal Twitter, where would I do that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I am on Twitter at YuKnowKempa, YuKnowKempa.
You can find me at Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
And you can find me at Flojaune, FLOJAUNE.
Shannon is at ShannND Stevens. Moiz, are you findable personally on the internet? It's okay to say no.
I would direct you to redoing Twitter at Sac Sunrise.
Perfect.
Love
and
it.
Sunrise is also, Sac Sunrise is also on Instagram too, and very active there, right?
On Instagram as at Sunrise MBMT Sac.
Great.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, guys, that is the show for today. As usual, we love you, and we want you to stay safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from me.
That's the one. All right, guys, we will see you in a few days.
Yeah, sounds good.
See you soon.
Bye.